Hello, hello. Today I'm working mostly in the wool room and I thought I would just show you what I'm up to. I don't film in here very much because it's mostly chaos. So I often am downstairs whilst showing you the things I've been doing. But while I'm actually doing stuff, I thought I would just spend a bit of time in here and we'll see how we go. So I'm going to be doing lots of little bits and pieces. I've spent my morning doing admin. So that's just lots of sitting at the computer, which isn't fun for you. But I am preparing for a big shop update next week. So I'll show you some of the colours of that and some of the other little bits and tasks that I have either been putting off for a while or am planning for future projects. So I've got some yarn down here. I'll show you that later. And then some fabric here. Again, I will talk about that in a little bit because I've been making some plans. And I have been meaning to sort out my loom for ages. So I have more heddles here, quite a lot more heddles. And they need to go on the loom here so that I can, because the previous person who owned this loom was a tapestry weaver, and I think she might have put the Texsolve on. I don't know if originally it would have just had string heddles. I think string rather than metal ones. And I know she tends to work fairly narrow and fairly coarse. But I want to be weaving fine cloth, so I need loads more heddles so that I can get loads more yarn on the loom. So that is one of the things I'm going to be doing. So I've got my bundles of heddles here. I'll just get them all out of the packets. I've got 4 bundles. They come in bundles of 100. So I'm going to be adding 400 heddles to the loom, which will be 100 on each shaft because I've got 4 shafts here. And so what I'm planning on doing is the way they're set up. I take this off. They've got these black ties separating out the loops of the heddles. So theoretically, I should just be able to slide those onto the top and bottom of the shaft. And then down here, annoyingly, I've got a cord that separates one half from the other, and so I'll need to undo that and then slide 50 of these heddles across that way, and then I'll have an even number on each side, hopefully. first shaft done, that took literally a few minutes. I've been putting off doing that for months. But getting those on there, so I'll do the rest of these in a second. I think I need to... Ambulance. I think I need to adjust the height of this shaft just a little bit because it looks like it's dropped when I've untied it there. But that's okay. I usually need to do some tweaking when I set up a new project anyway, so I will do that probably when I get things on the loom. And I'm going to be weaving with this yarn. So this will be the warp. This is an undyed grey lamb's wool. British wool, not breed specific. Bought it years ago. And then this is the same yarn dyed with coreopsis from my old garden, and I believe modified with iron, because coreopsis usually gives like a really nice, well, this was Coreopsis grandiflora rather than tinctoria, so it usually gives like really strong golden yellows rather than some of the oranges you can get from Dyer's Cosmos, Dyer's Coreopsis, which is the tinctoria. So I think I modified this with iron to get this brown colour. When I was talking on the podcast episode last time, I only had these 2 skeins, and I was slightly disappointed with how much yarn I had, because it meant that I wasn't really going to be able to weave a sensible amount of cloth. I found another one just in the box where these ones were, and it's a bigger skein. I was sure I had more, but I dyed these probably about 5 years ago, so yeah. So I'll be getting those on the loom hopefully quite soon now, because I've also got my warping board ready to use. I needed to sand down the pegs a bit so that it behaves itself. And so that should be a project that I am basically ready to get started on once I've got these. Okay, I thought that was going to be like a nice easy thing to make me feel better about having put that off for so long. Turns out I had made a bold and incorrect assumption, and there is not the same number of heddles on each shaft. They have all been put on completely randomly, and so I have done a complex diagram of which heddles I need to move where to get an even number on each shaft. I don't have time or patience to actually do that now, so I'm just going to move on, and I'll do that later when I'm less annoyed. So we'll ignore that for now. I'll talk about my fabric because I'm excited about this. I went a couple of days ago with lovely Lorna from Thread and Yarn to go and visit Organic Textile Company, which is a company I've known about for a long time. I bought some heavy linen fabric from them many years ago. Well, not that many, but quite a few years ago, for my wedding dress. And they used to be based in Wales and have somewhat recently moved down to Somerset, and so are not at all far from where I live. And I realised that they have a showroom that is open to the public. And so Lorna and I took a little trip to go and see what they've got. So Organic Textile Company, they source fabric from various places. They do a lot of organic cotton and are fairly up on their sourcing of fabrics and making sure that they've got good supply chain transparency and stuff, which is important to me because I want to be doing some sewing with plant fibre fabrics, which we cannot get in the UK from the UK because we haven't commercially produced plant fibres for a very long time. And I want to do a bit more sewing because with the weaving, I'm going to be making more cloth with a view to doing more sewing. I've got quite a few projects queued up for probably the next couple of years now. And so I'd just like to get into a bit more sewing and have things that are projects that I can work on with material that's not quite as precious as like hand woven, sometimes hand spun cloth. And so yeah, I got a couple of things, well, 3 things. This one is actually, this is a cotton cross weave, and it's actually got dots on it. Really fine little dots. And it's this really nice, like, beigey colour, but it has the tiniest bit of a purple tint to it, which isn't showing up at all. And the dots are a kind of purpley brown. You can kind of see in the threads that are coming off the sides. So I think it's got a beige warp and a darker brown weft. Yes, that is correct. Just looking at which way the fabric's fraying at the ends. I'm not interested in the dots. I'm not a dotty kind of person. But this side of the fabric is really nice because it has that different colour in the warp and weft. It gives a lovely, just like quite a dimensional effect. And it's a nice kind of light to mid-weight cotton. And so this, when I bought it, I didn't account for shrinkage, and it shrunk quite a bit when I washed it. So you can tell it's been a while since I've done like garment sewing with commercial fabric. But I think I can just eke a bramble skirt, which is Lorna's design, out of the fabric I've got here. I'm going to have to be a bit careful about the placement of my tiers, but I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm hoping to do that fairly soon. I think that would be really nice, like hopefully before the summer is out, or at least it feels like summer is coming to a close very, very quickly. We've had so much lovely hot weather and loads of sunshine. It's been a bit difficult for the garden. Everything is very, very dry, obviously causing problems with the amount of water we have available. But I do love the hot weather and the sunshine makes me happy. But now we've had a few days where it's been a bit more grey, and it's got that feeling of, it's not autumn. It's not even really going to feel like autumn for quite a long time. Like the leaves aren't properly going to go for months. But at the same time, we can start getting excited about it, right? So yes, while we've got that bit of nice weather that isn't autumn nice weather, I'm hoping to be able to wear that skirt. And yeah, I think that'll be lovely. And then I'm hoping that that would double up as a petticoat to go under other things, because layering is great, and I would like to be able to wear more skirts in the autumn and winter when it's chilly, without having to wear quite as many pairs of tights as I usually do, because I do get really chilly. Yes. And then I got this, which was just a remnant. It's a meter's length of like approximately 115 centimetre wide bamboo. And it's got really, really beautiful drape to it. It was white. It now has the palest pink shade to it, which I'm fine with because I'm planning on dyeing it anyway. I laundered all 3 of these fabrics together, and so there's obviously been some colour transfer. So this one I'm hoping to make just like a little slip dress thing. I'm going to have to be very careful about rationing my fabric and clever about how I cut it out. And that will be a fun challenge. And I've yet to decide what colour I want to dye it. Like I might do something like more of the kind of purpley browny thing, or maybe I could go for like a rusty reddy orangey situation, or maybe something green. I haven't decided. I'm in a big green phase. If you've been watching things recently, you've probably noticed. And I've always liked green, but particularly keen on the green now. And then the last one is I got 3 meters of this fabric, and I'm pretty sure, but these are the same like fabric weight and spec, and I'm fairly certain that it might not be actually. It's not. I am no longer fairly certain. I am fairly certain that it's not the case. But the weft threads in here are a very similar colour to this fabric, and so they work really nicely together. I'm not necessarily going to use them in the same project, but if I had some left over from one or the other, I could use one for like trimming or something. And this I'm planning on making a dress, probably with a nice big gathered skirt and some pockets and some kind of v-neck, probably sleeveless, because I don't think I have enough fabric for sleeves. I might be able to get little cap sleeves or something, but I also want to be able to wear it under the many jumpers and cardigans I have that have quite tight sleeves. And so if I do sleeves, I want to make sure that they would be suitable for that, and it's not a stretchy fabric, so I would just have to account for that. And I will probably not use. I will probably Frankenstein together about 3 different patterns that I have, and then draft some bits myself to come up with what I actually want, because I'm not very good at following sewing patterns. It's nice to have some pattern pieces just as a starting point, and then to go off piece to make the thing I want happen. But yeah, so I'm excited about those. So there will be some sewing in my near future, and I shall be sharing how I get along with that. So yes, it was really, really lovely to go for a trip to the fabric shop with Lorna. If you're interested in any of those fabrics, I'm going to drop some links in the description box so that you can find them. They are a really nice and I think quite underrated company. Like lots of, for people who like natural fibres, and preferably like with an amount of environmental and ethical credentials. You often hear people talking about like Ray Stitch and Merchant and Mills. These guys have slightly less choice in terms of colours and prints and things, but their prices are really, really good, and I'm a big fan. So yeah, and yeah, so I just had a lovely trip with Lorna. We chatted about fabric for ages. She helped me with decisions because it's been a very long time since I've been fabric shopping. And then we went for a nice little lunch and a tiny walk, which I shall show you now. very almost over. You can see they've started producing seeds, which I need to start gathering because they're going to start falling everywhere. But what they do is the flower heads fall off pretty much whole, which means they're really easy to gather, and they make a fairly nice dye, which can range from sort of greys to greens to sometimes purple, depending how you modify them. So I've just been saving them up this summer, and eventually I will get back into naturally dyeing with them, but just for little personal projects rather than anything for sale. And I need to come up with a better receptacle for them because this bowl is definitely not big enough now. So I am hoping to get back into a little bit of natural dyeing in a very gentle way. And one of the things that I am hoping to naturally dye has arrived just this morning. I've yet to decide what plants I'm going to be using or even what kind of project this is going to be. But I'll just show you something really sweet and exciting. So this is the package that's arrived this morning. This is one I already had. Sorry for any crinkling here. This is some very precious silk from previously English mulberry, now William Hyatt. William is, as far as I know, the only person in the UK producing ethical silk. So he raises silk moths, lets them hatch out of the cocoons, and then harvests the cocoons. And so these are processed silk cocoons. This is mulberry silk, so he grows his own mulberry. And it's just beautiful. And they will need, you know, picking apart so that I can spin from them. And it's just completely lovely. It's this gentle creamy white. And so I bought that a while ago with the hope of doing a bit of sampling, maybe mixing it with some wool or some flax, but to just keep hold of until I was ready. And now William is stopping raising the silk moths commercially, and so he's just going to be keeping some kind of as a hobby, which means that he's stopping selling silk on his website. So I panicked a little bit and I bought more of the processed cocoons. So processed just means that they've been washed and degummed, so all of the sticky binder that keeps the cocoon intact while the caterpillar is in there has been washed off. So I bought some more silk there, and these are red airy silk cocoons. So these haven't been processed, these are just as the caterpillars have escaped out of the cocoons. So theoretically there should be a little hole here somewhere. So they nibble out of the cocoons somewhere at the end, and then the moths fly off, do their thing, which isn't much because the moths, once they've emerged from the cocoons, have a very short lifespan, and basically hang around long enough to make more caterpillars, and then that's kind of it. So these I will need to do that cleaning and degumming process. And the fact that they have come out, I think it's at the end here where they, yeah, you can see some broken bits at the end there. So the fact that they emerge from the cocoons means that the lengths of silk you can get from this kind of silk are quite short. So instead of the traditional reeled silk where you can wind off the entire filament that's been wound around itself time and time again to make the cocoon, you can't do that with these because that thread has been cut through where the caterpillars nibble their way out. So the fibres are much shorter, which gives you a different, it gives you, you can see there are some sort of little neppy bits in there. And so it just gives a slightly different effect, but it's still beautiful silk fibre. And I tend not to use silk loads. Oh, we're really wonky now. I tend not to buy new silk, but I am unsure of the origin of it, just because the idea kind of icks me out a little bit. Because if you want that really long filament of fibre that hasn't been nibbled through, you need to kill the caterpillars while they're in the cocoon and then process the cocoons to get the dead caterpillars out, whilst preserving the strand of silk. And that whole thing just like, it icks me out a bit. You know, even though I'm not going to get into like how much, like the moths are around for, I think, a couple of days after they've hatched. But it still means that they're around to then make more caterpillars, which will then make more silk, which will then make more moths. I don't know. It's all a weird thing. I prefer not killing the caterpillars to get your silk if possible. So this is a lovely thing. So I'm very excited to work with these. It's not necessarily soon, but I'm brainstorming, and I've got stashed away somewhere a precious bit of madder that I grew in the old garden. When we've sorted out the back garden, because my studio is currently being built, I'm hoping to move into there in the winter, which will mean I won't be in this room, and so I will actually have enough space, hopefully, for a little while. And when we have got that built, it'll mean that I can do more growing things in the back garden. And I'm hoping to get some dye plants out there, which will hopefully include some madder. And I might use the tiny bit of madder root I already have that's dry to dye some of the silk. But I've never dyed with madder before, so it could be really fun. Yeah, that's that on the silk, really. I love the natural colour of these ones, so I won't be dyeing these because they're just very pretty. This really nice natural warm orange is kind of like the dye you get from onion skins. But that is the natural colour that this particular caterpillar produces. And so yes, that is silk. Those just arrived this morning, so I was very excited about that. Again, I will link to William because I think for a very short amount of time he's still selling a bit of silk, and he seems to be doing a really nice thing, and I think it's a real shame that the silk farm isn't going to be going ahead, commercially at least. Yeah, now I'm going to show you some colours. So next week, I have a shop update coming with a new collection of yarn colours and some fibre as well. It's been quite a long time since I've done both, and I'm really excited about these ones. I've been having so much fun dyeing these up. I've been doing lots of dyeing for quite a long time now, because I've also had a big wholesale order which I'm about to ship out, which I will tell more about on my newsletter and things when that is ready to be announced. And so that is 8 limited edition colours of my skewer blend spinning fibre. But yeah, I will show you those when that's ready. And then on top of that, I've got these ones which are going in my own shop. So we've got 5 colours on my Mendip yarn, and then a selection of colours on my fibre bases. The fibre I don't have all here because I've got a couple still in the works. And I'm not sure whether to show you yarn or fibre first. I think I'll do yarn because I'm excited about it. So I have come up with this little range of like that feeling I was saying of like it's still technically summer but I'm getting excited about autumn. So I'm getting all about the like earthy jewel tones, and you know, I'm particularly fond of these because I think they're colours that look good on me. But I think there's lots in there, like this one I think particularly is a colour that looks good on so many people. So yeah, I'm really excited about these. I've dyed quite a few skeins of them. So they are limited edition, so it is a case of once they're gone, they're gone. But I really like them. So they are both, they're all dyed on both the 4-ply and the DK. These are the 4-ply ones here, and where possible, if I can extract some, I will show you the DK. So first up is Gorse. This is, you know, it's mostly dark, slightly warm green, slightly muted green. Most of them are somewhat muted colours because they're all dyed on the cloudy base of the Mendip yarn, which is naturally grey. And so that kind of makes the whole palette a bit darker and more muted anyway. So we've got like some areas of quite dark green and then some areas of this goldy yellow. And with all of them I've gone for, if there is variegation, it's very low contrast. So they should all knit up quite nicely without sort of too much like dramatic pooling and things. Like there will be some pooling, but it should be reasonably subtle, which is what I prefer when I'm knitting. So this one is Gorse. This one is Maple. So in some areas you have tiny bits of the natural grey showing through, and this is mostly like this really nice rusty red, and then with these orangey goldeny yellow bits. And I was going to say this one might be my favourite, but I think I would knit with all of them, and I would really enjoy doing so. So I just really like rusty red. Then this one has some of the same kind of rusty tones in there, but overall it's a much more pinky red. Not too dissimilar from what I'm wearing. It's a little bit warmer and darker, and slightly more saturated. Yeah, so we've got the slightly orangey bits in areas and then other areas that are that more dark, like purpley burgundy. This one is called Dogwood, after the stems of the dogwood, mostly like the ones you get in hedges, common cornus that we get in native hedgerows in this country, and also in the autumn the leaves do go this amazing like purpley burgundy colour, which I think is beautiful, and I think I've started to see some of them turning in the hedges already. Maple I didn't explain, but it's mapley colours. It's when acers start turning in the autumn, because that's what they do. And Gorse again is the colours of gorse. And then sticking with the warm colours, this one is horseshoe, which is, so I said we're building my studio in the back garden at the moment. The chap who used to live in this house was a blacksmith, and the outbuilding that we have had to demolish because it wasn't really fit for any kind of purpose. There were loads of really big old like cart horseshoes left in there, and they were all rusty, and they've got that kind of pinky brown with some of the grey of the iron showing through. That's just kind of a little homage to that. And yeah, so we just have these wonderful collections of massive horseshoes and don't really know what to do with them, but I want to keep them because it's nice. And this one, like it's functionally a neutral, but it has like areas of like quite warm orangey bits and then more purpley browns, but again, very muted. So this one I'm really, really keen on. Some of them are twisted like slightly differently, so you can see more of the reddy colours in this one. And so that's horseshoe. And then last up is toolbox, because this feels like it's just a toolbox colour, right? Like the traditional old metal ones, and it kind of feels like it should have some of the paint that's this colour flaking off with some of this showing through. I think that's a really beautiful colour combination. I think those would pair really nicely. I mean, you can make nice combinations out of all of these. Like you could stripe those for some really greeny vibes. Oh, that would be really nice. I kind of want to do them all in stripes, and I'm not usually a stripy person, but I think they're I think they would work nicely in stripes. I think it works really well with this kind of dye distribution, like that low contrast tonal effect. You could also pair them with more solid colours. If you wanted to do colour work or something, they are low enough contrast within each skein that as long as you picked a yarn that had decent contrast with like all areas of the skein, you could do some stranded colour work and it would be beautiful. So yes, this one has the lowest amount of variegation. So there is still some tonal difference across the skein, which would then show up a fair bit when you're knitting. So you would get that lovely kind of dimensional effect when it's knitted up. Assuming you're going to knit with them. You don't have to knit with them. I mostly knit with hand-dyed yarn. But you could crochet with them. You could weave with them. I think they would look beautiful woven up. And again, if you were doing that and like combining different yarns for warp and weft, you can then do really interesting combinations. Like in weaving, I really love a sort of turquoisey tealy blue paired with something browny orange. One as warp and one as weft. And overall the effect you get is a kind of browny tealy thing. But I think they set each other off beautifully. And so I have dyed up 14 skeins of each of these on the 4-ply and the DK. So that's 700 grams available of each colour on each base. And they would just work really nicely. And then if you were going for the DK ones, I've got some. Oop. You're a DK, you're a DK. So the colours are the same. Visually, they can look a tiny bit different just because of how the dye distributes itself. And the fact that they were dyed in different batches. That's the DK and that's the 4-ply. And with the DK, I've been thinking it would be really nice to do a frost beam shawl. Let me just get it a second. So this is my frost beam. Make sure I've got it the right way around. So it's a shawl I designed a few years ago now, originally for Making Stories, issue 4, I think, maybe issue 3, I don't remember. And so it's a really fun, like, parallelogram shawl where you start at one end with one colour with 3 stitches, and then you increase. This is done with very simple intarsia, so when you change yarns, you just cross them over on the back to lock them together, and it gets wider and wider, and then there's a very short period in the middle where you're working with 3 balls of yarn, because you've got one contrast colour on this side, one contrast colour on this side, and then the main colour in the middle. And then from the midpoint, that's got snagged a bit. From the midpoint, it then gets narrower and narrower until you're back down to 3 stitches. So if you're someone who doesn't like casting on or binding off stitches for shawls, usually one of which you'll have to do lots of, it's a good one for you, because you don't have to do much of either. And you also know exactly when you're at the halfway point to make sure that you have enough yarn, and for motivational purposes, because you know that the amount of time you've just spent knitting it, you are going to now spend finishing it. And it's just a really, because of the lace, so it's the DK weight, the lace means it scrunches up quite nicely, and you can be quite you can style it a few different ways, but like these borders just give it some really nice interest. And I really love the contrast of having the ribbing in one colour and the lace in another. And so you could do some fun combinations with these, either with using like a solid colour for the main colour in the lace, if you think the variegation would be a bit distracting, and then just have like a variegated skein for the border section. Or you could pair, where are we? You could pair a couple of them together. I mean, I like this combination, so something like that could work really nicely. So this is the teal colourway, which is one of my regular colours. So you can see this is a little bit cooler and darker, and it's got that, it's more tonal, and like it's not quite variegated, but it's definitely a semi-solid, not a solid. This is technically a semi-solid because you will get some colour variation in there as well. And they would all obviously pair really nicely with the natural grey. So yeah, that's just one idea for those. I think that would be really pretty. And I really love this shawl. I wear it a lot. And it's just a really fun knit. The lace is very simple. Oh, that's the back. Yeah, so the back of the lace is pretty as well. Because I wanted to make sure, because it's a shawl, it's probably going to be on view at some point. So both the back and the wrong side and right side, but both of them are nice. Yes, so those are the yarn colours. And then I'll just quickly show you the fibre colours that I am able. So let's start with tilth, which are the really moody ones. I don't have names for these yet because I haven't named them yet. I need to get around to doing that. I have an awful lot of labelling to do, and that will be my next couple of days. Super moody. We've got like, this is like, so the tilth blend is naturally very dark. It's quite bouncy and crimpy and fairly soft. It's got Jacob, Black Welsh Mountain, Ooh, Blue-Faced Leicester, Suffolk, and maybe that's all of them. I feel like there should be another one. Unsure. No, maybe that's all of them. Maybe it's those 4. So this is kind of like, in the lighter sections, it's quite a sort of low saturation chartreuse. And then you've got areas that are kind of like aubergine purple. And then this really deep, like inky, purpley blue. So this one is, you've got some tiny bits that are like a bit more of a heathery purple. And so overall, very moody, and I think really wearable. Because again, it's on a dark base already, and so the contrast between the different coloured areas is quite low. And you could spin it up to be either like preserve those colour changes, or, as I usually do, shred it into pieces and muddy them all up to give something quite like the colours are well distributed but all muddy together, and it's slightly more uniform looking. Then this one is like mostly reddy greeny bits, but then some yellowy bits, and just some really lovely sections where the colours transition from one to another. Like these ones are very moody. We've got some slightly less moody ones coming up. So you've got these like nice deep crimsony bits, and then little bits of a sort of foresty green, and some orangey yellowy bits. But again, all quite murky, which we love. Look how pretty that is. Then let's do feather blend for the opposite end of the colour thing. And so feather blend is much more lustrous and smooth. So I'm spinning it at the moment in a fairly, well, semi-solid green colour, which you can see in previous videos. And I designed it to be very lustrous and to be really good for spinning fine. So you can get it to quite a thin single. And it's got some very long fibres in it, so it kind of helps add a bit of strength to fine yarns. And yes, it's very lustrous and silky. This one's just so nice and coppery and just really comforting looking. It's got these lovely like terracotta-y shades and this kind of gentle ochre yellow and sort of rusty bits. And yeah, I love all these warm colours. And then like in some bits where the yellow goes like, it's not green, but it's got a tiny bit more of a green to it. I really like this one. And then this one is super fun. I love this one. Mostly greeny blues, but then with little corally bits. And in places where you get the coral like intersecting with the blue, you've got like some slightly purpley areas. Like again, that's quite similar to what I'm wearing. And some really dark bluey bits, and then some more like fresh sea glassy colours, and then some slightly vibrant blues, like quite turquoisey bits there, and a bit of cobalt. And this one would just, it's one of those ones that would just be so much fun to spin and see how you choose to distribute the colours, and that you could knit it up into, like, again, if you're knitting, if you spin it up to preserve all of the colour changes, you could end up with like quite wide bands of colour as it shifts from one to another. Or again, you could do a fractal thing to distribute the corally bits a bit more. And it is just one of those ones that would be, rather than the fairly solid colour I'm spinning at the moment, which is just, it's more of very slight variations on the same green, like you can have loads of fun with seeing what colour's coming up next, and I really enjoy that kind of spinning. I think I need to do a bit more of it soon. Then back to some Merc. This one is Solace Blend, and the next one will be as well. Oh, I didn't tell you what fibres are in Feather Blend. It is Teeswater, Wensleydale, Blueface Leicester and Shetland. So it is mostly like longer staple length fibres. The Shetland is probably the shortest staple length in there. The Blueface Leicester is there for a bit of softness. The Shetland provides, you can see some tiny streaky bits in here. The Shetland is what provides the bit of natural colour in there that adds like the dimensional stripy bits, because the Shetland is a Morit Shetland, the other fibres are white. And the Teeswater and Wensleydale are both very long and lustrous and quite silky, but can be slightly coarser fibres. But in this context, if you spin it really smoothly, they just spin up beautifully. Then this is Solace, which is Dorset Horn, Cotswold and Shropshire, which is a natural grey colour because the Dorset Horn and Cotswold are naturally whitey cream, and then the Shropshire adds a bit of grey. This doesn't have much of the natural colour show through. There's a tiny bit there, little flecks of it. But yeah, mostly like nice kind of muted heathery purples with some like greeny bits, and like where they intermingle you get this like deep dimensional grey. And I shouldn't tell you that to me it looks like a bruise, like a really bad bruise that is like on its way to healing, but before it starts going all yellow. Like that's what it looks like to me. But I've always thought that like the way those colours come together are completely fascinating. I can't call it bruise, mostly because I'm pretty sure I've already called a yarn bruise at some point in the past, which I shouldn't have done, but I don't have any left, so presumably people weren't put off enough to never buy it. But yes, I really like this one. Yeah, it's got quite dark bits in there. It's really fun. And then the last one that I have to show you now, let me snail it up because I think it shows them off quite nicely. This one actually has a name. This was named by one of my patrons, Cassian, thank you. Cassian mentioned that it looks like some of Monet's paintings of yellow irises in his garden against like the background of some of the other flowers he's got there. And so there's a lot of like pinky purple at Chivony, which is Monet's garden. So I've called it Irises at Chivony. Got a random bit of flax bark there, sorry. You can see this one's got more of the natural colour showing through. There you can see some of the streaks of the Shropshire, which is darker, like coming through. And so you've got these nice sort of fairly vibrant violet and like sort of hot pink, and then contrasting with this fun, reasonably bright yellow. And this one is one that has very distinct colour transitions. So again, could be really, really fun to plan your spin if you're someone who likes to do planned colour placement. So I can just show you those like this. And then there will be a couple more colours on Skewer Blend, but those are not dry yet. So yes, these are coming to the shop next week. They will be available to my patrons, that's paid patrons, on Thursday the 28th. I hope I've got that correct. At 5 p.m. BST, so British summertime. And then that applies for the fibre and the yarn. And then it'll be open for the general public. And so we'll go out to newsletters, subscribers first on the Friday, so 24 hours after the Patreon access. And yeah, it's, I think, the biggest shop update I've done in quite a while. I'm really excited about these colours. I'm missing one. I keep missing the burgundy friend. Dogwood, we love you. So yes, I'm just really excited to have them out to you. And so I hope you will enjoy those. I'd really like to hear your thoughts on the colours, and you know, if you think they would be good for any particular patterns or projects, I'd really love to hear about that. And yeah, I think that's all I've got for you today. I could witter on for ages, but I need to do some labelling and eventually sort out my very naughty loom so that I can do some weaving at some point in the near future. So I will be back in a couple of weeks with a more standard podcast episode. And if you want to keep up with me in the meantime, you can join my Patreon, where I post bonus videos and lots of extra content for you. We're going to have a Zoom craft night coming up quite soon. And obviously you get early access to the shop update. And otherwise, if you're not up for joining Patreon for whatever reason, which is fine, you can join my newsletter, and that's where I announce most new releases and things, and any updates. So yeah, it's been lovely chatting with you a bit. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the yarn and the random stuff I've been working on, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.